I have some questions that are here that I'm going to share, and anybody else, and they're coming in quite thick and fast now, so I will begin. The first question is for Ben. It's Vicky Avery. Vicky says, Ben, great work. How have you consulted with your local communities to ensure multi-vocality and find out what they want to see in terms of your public programmes?
Yeah, so we have consulted in various different ways. Obviously, this is, in terms of representation, it's so vast. We used to, a long time ago, have kind of advisory groups, but now it's much more of a case of we have kind of various contacts, various networks. We know of organisations that already exist that we will go to and speak with whenever we're thinking of doing anything that we think will be impactful with those communities, or that we want to work with those communities. I will say that a lot of in terms of the displays and the exhibitions and things we've done, I think the key thing that I and other curators, particularly in Colchester, have always tried to aim for is intersectionality. So we haven't, for a long while, we haven't done an exhibition or a display that looks just at one type of person within society. We haven't done an exhibition that looks just at women. We haven't done an exhibition that looks just at the LGBTQ community. We've tried to make sure that our exhibitions and displays look at themes and that there is representation within those themes. For various reasons we've done that. So a few years ago we had the idea of doing an LGBTQ plus exhibition. I took that to an advisory group that I'd set up of various organisations in Colchester, and the consensus from that meeting was that they didn't want one, and so we didn't do one. And we have since worked with those various organisations in various different ways since then. But I think the key thing that we kind of do is we do consult with groups before we do anything, just to make sure that they're happy, and we try and involve them as much as possible. But yeah, we try and work in a variety of different ways depending on the context of what the project, event, exhibition, whatever it is.
Okay, well, the next question's for you too, Ben. And this is from Nikki Wilson. Ben, have you found that by increasing representation within your displays and engagement opportunities has resulted in any change in your audience?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've done, we do a lot of, anyone who works in museums, is looking at evaluation and visitor surveys. And it's quite odd because we look at trying to be representative of our community, like I say. So we kind of take information about kind of ethnicity, age, gender, all of those things when visitors, they don't have to, but we try and get information from our visitors to know the sorts of people that are visiting our museums. And a few years ago, there was this kind of study looking at how representative our visitors are compared to the rest of the town. And actually, we're quite on par, if that makes sense. Kind of the proportional representation of the people in Colchester matches the sorts of people that are visiting our museums. Doesn't mean there's not still a lot of work to do to make sure that those people feel comfortable when they are visiting our museums, and that they kind of feel represented in the displays, like I said. But it's definitely had an impact on more. So when we had our event for Black History Month last October, there was a huge number of people that came that day compared to other events that we've hosted kind of around the same time of year in the same venue. So I think definitely kind of reaching out to these different communities has definitely proved that people are willing to come for us, trying different things, that people are willing to come to our museums for that.
Thanks, Ben. The next question is from Stephen Bourne, and it's to GURINDER and/or TARAN. Have you found people receptive or hostile to your work? How has that coloured your exhibitions?
I think I'll start and TARAN can follow up. I don't think there's been much hostility to the kind of work we've been doing, basically. I think it's more explorative in terms of, once we did our first exhibition back in 2016, 2017, looking at the Anglo Sikh Wars, which is a bit of a kind of a tightrope to walk on in terms of actually doing an exhibition. But still, we managed to maneuver it very, very creatively in terms of actually making and ensuring that our exhibition boards were actually undertaken, with a balanced view on history. In terms of the Anglo Sikh Virtual Museum, in terms of old and new, looking at old technology versus new technology, I think the young generation are grasping it a lot better. Obviously, as we know that when we look at kids learning in school these days, they can pick up an iPad, they can pick up resources, everything's on mobile phones these days. So having digital resources actually doesn't have to be a young preserve, so to speak, because even with all the digital technologies we've employed, it reaches all age groups. But I think just in terms of the opposition part, I don't think we've had major opposition. I think it's more a case of clarity and people understanding how technology works. And I think maybe Taran, you might want to just add to that, if that's okay.
Yeah, I just want to say, because it's like a shared history between the British and the Sikhs, we haven't really found that much hostility really. On the technology side, I find that some of the older the people are, the more hostile they are towards the technology, especially the VR headsets, whereas younger people are very attracted towards these types of technologies. So I think we've done a lot of work with user testing in terms of making people feel more comfortable, orienting them and making it so that it's very easy to use. We've really simplified the experience, so pretty much anyone can come in, and if they feel uncomfortable standing, they can sit down and have the experience as well. We have had some kind of hostility from some museums as well, because sometimes they think these technologies are dark arts, and we just have to kind of explain that these aren't trying to take, we're not trying to take audiences away from you. We're actually trying to get them more interested in the objects and bring them into the museums.
That's really interesting. Ben, another question from Stephen for you. Stephen seeking clarity. What do you mean by decolonising your collections?
Yeah, so that's decolonising, as several people have alluded to, is a word that's being used quite a lot lately and means different things to different people, I think. Now, on the one hand, it is basically kind of giving back stuff that we've stolen, which for Colchester museums, at least, we're quite fortunate that we're in a position that we don't have very much of that, in terms of we're a museum that was started in the 1850s, very much looking at the local.
This time the question is for Maya. Maya, how do you promote your project? Which media work for you?
So we have a website, which is just majaseducationproject.com, and an Instagram account, which is Maja's Education Project. And any promotion of any sort is always welcomed. We've been on BBC, ITV, Sky, and yeah, so wherever it can go, it's just to make sure that anyone who's in a position where they can't, who's not in a position, sorry, to purchase their own books or resources, we're happy to send them out for free. So if there's anyone who can see that, then it's being promoted in the right place.
Thanks, Maya. And another question from Stephen, who I think is from the National Horse Racing Museum. And this isn't a question, this is a comment for Tom. Tom, a comment rather than a question. In my hometown, Newmarket, there are no bookshops. So we've started up a second-hand bookshop in the National Horse Racing Museum. Yes, really, lots of demand. So that's an interesting way of approaching no bookshops. Next question is for Maya, and this is Pripal Atwal. I hope I said that right, I'm sure I didn't. Hi Maya, that was fantastic. I really want to change our school's curriculum so that we actively promote anti-racist attitudes through our curriculum, not just in October. Could you direct me to a book list, websites or resources to support our teachers? Do you provide teacher training?
Yes, I provide any training for staff, teachers, and in terms of a book list for schools, if you want to drop me an email, I'm happy to send any books out to you, because we do donate to schools. We've donated just over £1,000 worth of books to schools. So my email is info@majaseducationproject.com, and I'm happy to send you any books or send you any recommendations, or yeah.
Thanks, Maya. No problem. This is to everyone, and it's from Mark Neville. Hi everyone, thank you for putting on this very interesting and informative event. I work for the Alzheimer's Society as a dementia-friendly communicators coordinator. One of my key roles is to support Essex-based organisations, group services, education and leisure facilities to be more aware of how they can deliver their services to be more inclusive of people affected by dementia, particularly in the light of the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on both people living with dementia and those from BAME communities. Please contact me if you would like to discuss how collectively we can be more inclusive of all people living with dementia, including those from the BAME communities. And we have Mark's email there, which I'm sure Joe will be able to circulate after this event. And this is a question for Beth from Wendy Constance. When and where will the Snapping the Stiletto event start?
Yeah, so very soon. I don't have an exact date yet. The project manager started last week, and so did the learning officer. Everything got delayed because of COVID, so they're just kind of kicking it off now. The best place to look is I'll put the website in the Q&A, and they also have a Twitter account at Snap the Stiletto. So as soon as the project launches, all of that will go on there. And in terms of where, there are several partner museums involved, which I won't say just now because I know they're just kind of having those conversations at the moment, and some museums might not be able to be as involved as they had hoped pre-pandemic. And also it was supposed to be very community event focused, but obviously given the situation at the moment, the project team are going to have to adapt things slightly. But the team is fab, everything seems to be in place. So yeah, keep an eye on the website, which I'll put in the Q&A and Twitter, and then you'll get all the updates there.
Thanks, Beth. This isn't directed at anyone in particular, but I'm going to hand it on to Gurinder and Taran, I think. This is from Janice. What should the stance of British museums be on repatriation?
Yeah, I think this is a very difficult question, actually, because I think whilst there is this kind of big debate in terms of actual, colonialism, loot, if you can call it that word as well, in terms of what should happen to these objects, I think it's a very difficult question to answer. And I think each museum is going to have their own policy as to how they deal with it, because either it opens up a can of worms, or either there has to be some way of actually kind of stating how, people actually, respond to these kind of requests. So it's a very difficult question. It's not easy just to say, yes, everything that came into this country should go back, because it simply doesn't work that way. And sometimes what we have seen in the past as well is that sometimes things are labeled as if they were taken by, say the British from a certain country, but then afterwards we find out they were actually gifted. So, there's different kind of arguments all the way through in terms of repatriation, and there's so many kind of layers and ideas which go behind it. So it's not a real answer, I don't think, which can cut across all museums. I don't know if Taran wants to elaborate on that. Or anyone else.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think for myself, I think it doesn't really matter where the objects are, as long as they're accessible to those communities. I think as long as they're accessible, I think that's the main thing, really. I don't really see the need to kind of maybe repatriate them unless there's some kind of cultural significance of those objects to those communities. But I think that's one of the reasons that we pursue digitizing objects as well, because a lot of our artifacts are scattered around the world, private collections. A lot of these private collectors don't want to let go of the objects that they've got as well. So digitizing them is a way of kind of like making them available to pretty much millions of people without having to physically move the object.
Ben, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I thought I might jump in now that my alarm stopped, because it kind of ties back to what I was talking about before anyway. So yeah, the vast majority, when we talk about decolonizing, a lot of the time we talk about repatriation in terms of objects going back to where they came from. And as kind of been mentioned, that's not necessarily always the case. Sometimes there's museums will make the decision to keep stuff. Sometimes they'll make the decision to take stuff back. Ipswich and Colchester are slightly different in that respect. So like I said, Colchester doesn't have a lot of that sort of material. Ipswich does. So we're tackling this concept in different ways, but also decolonising goes far beyond that. It goes to interpretation. It goes to our understanding of the past. Now, one of the things we are looking at in Colchester is how empire has affected our understanding of history, in a sense. So, for example, the Roman Empire, we are well known for our Roman collections in Colchester. Our understanding for the past 100-odd years of what the Roman Empire was like is very much rooted in British colonialism. It's the understanding of how the British Empire worked that kind of fed into the understanding of how the Roman Empire was supposedly working. And so there's been a lot of research done in recent years trying to pull apart that and try and say, actually, the Roman Empire was something very different to the British Empire, and we need to kind of look at those different things. And so it's as much an ideological concept, decolonizing, and as we talked about with literature and kind of with Maya saying about kind of growing up with certain kind of representation in the media, in books, in everything, it's kind of unlearning what we've learned in certain aspects and kind of reassessing how representative kind of people in the past were. So you think of Roman, you'll automatically think of a certain thing, but actually the Romans were very diverse, and we know that now. But for the past 100, go into most museums in the UK that have Roman collections, including ours, and we're aware of this, and this is something we're working on. You'll see white people everywhere, and that's not how it was. That wouldn't have been what you would have seen walking around Roman Colchester. So I think that's as much a part of it as kind of giving stuff back to the countries where they belong. It's kind of understanding our current awareness of the past comes very much from empire.
Thanks, Ben. Indy has sent us a message saying the Windrush panels were curated by Essex Cultural Diversity Project and available for loan free for schools, organisations, museums and libraries. Question for Taran from Laura Aziz. Hey Taran, which museums are using displaying your work?
Yeah, so currently they're not on display at the moment. They were on display at Newark Houses Museum, and we have gone around to various museums, so Royal Armouries in Leeds, to do certain kind of weekends where we're displaying our kind of VR headsets. But currently all of the work is available online on our website, anglosikmuseum.com. And we did have a screen on our Ancient House Museum as well, the touch screen. So we are working on kind of moving all the work that we've done, which is online, and actually publishing it to the App Store for the VR headsets. So pretty much it will open up access to everyone, really. And I think that's the power of having something digital, that it's not kind of restricted to a certain museum or a location. We can put it online on the App Store, on a mobile App Store, and anyone around the world can download it and experience those objects. So, yeah.
That's absolutely amazing. And Indy's got another comment, I think for Stephen, an earlier questioner. I visited the bookshop yesterday at the National Horse Racing Museum. It's a great resource and very well used. Great concept. Well, that's the end of the questions. I think that's really, really interesting. One of the things that very much binds it is the way of communicating via stories and themes. As a book festival, I'm really interested in how we reach people. So this has been particularly valuable for us. I would like to thank everyone for joining us tonight, and thanks again to all of our panelists and speakers. This is a really important conversation, not just for the book festival and not just for Essex. One thing that I found really liberating, and it, possibly the only thing I found liberating about lockdown, is the fact that suddenly we we're able to communicate to so many people. Normally with our events, we talk to quite a small radius, but suddenly we're able to have conversations all over the world, and I find that very exciting, particularly when we're talking about cultural repatriation, object repatriation. We're talking, you know, about identity and stories. So this is an interesting point. We would very much like to continue this conversation. So if you have any comments or questions, please email them to jo@essexcdp.com, and she'll post them on the website or pass them on to the speakers. We now have these mugs. So I'd just like to invite everyone to say cheers. Cheers. Stand up for diversity. I think that's it for tonight. We really hope to see you at another Stand Up for Diversity event, and good night. Thank you. Bye.